I stood in my kitchen staring at a credit card statement that showed $47,000 in charges I never made. Designer handbags, luxury vacations, jewelry I'd never seen, and every single purchase had been made by my own children, the ones I'd trusted with emergency access to my accounts. When I canceled the cards and filed fraud charges, they didn't apologize. They showed up at my door with a lawyer ready to destroy me, but they had no idea who they were really dealing with. My name is Vivian, and I'm 72 years old. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with all of you. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because the betrayal I'm about to share changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. I raised 3 children as a single mother after my husband passed away when I was 45. Michael was my oldest at 50 now, followed by Jennifer at 47 and Daniel at 44. I worked 2 jobs for years, bookkeeping during the day and weekend shifts at a hospital cafeteria, to put all 3 through college. I never remarried. Every spare dollar went toward their education, their weddings, their first homes. I told myself that was what good mothers did. They sacrificed. By the time I retired at 68, I'd saved carefully. I had my pension, some modest investments, and about $180,000 in savings. Not wealthy by any means, but comfortable. I could finally breathe. I could finally stop counting every penny and maybe take a trip once a year, buy books without guilt, donate to my church without calculating whether I'd have enough left for groceries. The trouble started about 8 months ago, during Sunday dinner at Michael's house. All 3 of my children were there with their spouses, and the conversation turned to emergency preparedness. Michael, who works in insurance, brought up the importance of having backup plans. "Mom, what would happen if you had a medical emergency and couldn't access your accounts?" he asked, passing me the mashed potatoes. "We've been worried about you living alone." I'd been living alone for 27 years, perfectly capable, but I understood his concern. Jennifer chimed in immediately. "He's right, Mom. What if you're in the hospital and need someone to pay bills or handle urgent expenses? You should add us as authorized users on at least 1 or 2 of your credit cards, just for emergencies." Daniel nodded enthusiastically. "It's just a safety net. We'd never use them unless you absolutely needed us to. But God forbid something happens, at least we could take care of things for you." They made it sound so reasonable, so caring. I had 3 credit cards. One I used regularly for everyday expenses with a $15,000 limit, one for larger purchases with a $20,000 limit, and one I kept for true emergencies with a $25,000 limit. The idea of my children having access to help me if I was incapacitated seemed sensible. "I suppose that makes sense," I said slowly. "Just for emergencies, though." "Of course, Mom," Michael assured me, his hand on my shoulder. "Only emergencies." Within a week, I'd added all 3 of them as authorized users on all 3 cards. They each received their own cards in the mail. I remember Jennifer calling to thank me, telling me how much peace of mind it gave her knowing she could help if I needed it. I felt like a responsible parent planning ahead. The first unusual charge appeared 6 weeks later. I was reviewing my statement for my everyday card when I noticed a purchase at Nordstrom for $840. I didn't shop at Nordstrom. I called the number on the back of the card, and after being transferred twice, a representative confirmed the purchase had been made in California. I lived in Ohio. I'd never been to California. But the purchase was made with an authorized user card registered to Jennifer's name. I called Jennifer immediately. "Honey, did you use my credit card at Nordstrom? There's an $840 charge." There was a brief pause. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have asked first. My washing machine completely died, and I was between paychecks. I didn't want to bother you, but I needed it replaced urgently. I'll pay you back this Friday, I promise." A washing machine from Nordstrom seemed odd, but Jennifer sounded genuinely apologetic. "Okay, honey, just let me know when you transfer the money." Friday came and went. No payment. When I called her the following week, she apologized profusely. Her car had needed unexpected repairs. She'd pay me back next month for sure. I was disappointed but not alarmed. Jennifer had always been a bit scattered with money, even as a child. Then I got my next statement. This one showed $2,300 in charges I didn't recognize. Dinner at an expensive restaurant in Chicago, $420. A hotel in Miami, $680. Designer shoes, $890. Several smaller purchases at boutiques and spas. When I looked closer, I saw they'd been made with Michael's authorized card and Daniel's authorized card. My hands started shaking. I called Michael first. "Mom, I can explain," he said before I'd even finished asking. "Lisa and I had our anniversary, and I wanted to do something special for her. Things have been tight since my bonus didn't come through at work. I was going to tell you and pay you back. It's temporary, I swear." "Michael, this wasn't the agreement. These cards were for my emergencies, not your anniversary vacation." I know, you're absolutely right. I made a mistake. I'll transfer you the money next week when my paycheck comes in." But something in his voice felt rehearsed, too smooth. I called Daniel next about his charges, luxury skincare products, and a golf club membership. "Mom, you worry too much," he said, actually laughing. "It's not like you use those cards anyway. You told us yourself you hardly ever touch the one with the $25,000 limit. What's the harm in us using some of the available credit? We're family." "Daniel, that's not how credit cards work. I'm responsible for every purchase. You're supposed to pay me back. And I will, eventually." "Jesus, Mom, you're acting like we stole from you. We're your children." That phrase would haunt me. We're your children. I started checking my accounts obsessively after that. Every day I'd log in and review transactions, and every day there were more charges. Jennifer bought a designer handbag for $3,200. Michael booked another trip, this time to Las Vegas for $4,100. Daniel purchased a luxury watch for $5,800. None of them paid me back, not a single dollar. When I confronted them individually, I got excuses. Jennifer was dealing with unexpected dental work. Michael's company was restructuring and he was stressed. Daniel's wife had medical expenses. Always something. Always a reason why they couldn't repay me but could make new purchases. "Mom, we'll settle up eventually," Michael said when I called him, my voice shaking with anger. "Why are you being so uptight about this? You have good credit. You're not even using this money. We need it more than you do right now." "I worked 50 years for this security," I said. "This isn't your money to need." "We're family," Jennifer added when I confronted her on a 3-way call I'd arranged with all of them. "Family helps each other. After everything you've spent on us over the years, you're really going to make us feel guilty about this? You practically forced us to go to expensive colleges. You insisted on contributing to our weddings. Now you're keeping score?" I felt like I'd been slapped. They were turning my sacrifices, my choices made out of love, into debts they were owed. "I want the cards back," I said firmly. "All of them. Mail them to me this week." "Mom, don't be dramatic," Daniel said dismissively. "We'll pay you back. Just give us some time." But they didn't mail the cards back, and the charges didn't stop. Over the next 3 months, I watched helplessly as the numbers climbed. I called the credit card companies, but as authorized users, my children had every legal right to use the cards. The representatives were sympathetic but clear. I'd given them permission. Unless I removed them as authorized users and reported fraud, there was nothing the company could do. If I removed them, all the charges would still be my responsibility. I'd already paid $11,000 trying to keep my credit from being destroyed. My carefully built savings were draining away, and my children showed no remorse. They'd stopped returning my calls unless they wanted something else. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in April. I received all 3 credit card statements on the same day. My hands trembled as I opened them, already dreading what I'd find. The everyday card, maxed out at $15,000. The larger purchase card, maxed out at $20,000. The emergency card, $12,000 used of the $25,000 limit. Total $47,000 in charges I never made. I spread the statements across my kitchen table, my reading glasses slipping down my nose as I went through each line item. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, first-class flights to Paris, a 5-star hotel in Manhattan, jewelry, electronics, designer clothes, a $6,000 purse, a $4,800 dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant, spa treatments, concert tickets, things I couldn't afford in my entire working life, purchased casually with my credit by the children I'd raised. I thought about the years I'd eaten ramen noodles so they could have new shoes, the times I'd worked double shifts so they could go on school trips, the vacation I'd never taken, the car I'd driven for 15 years, the secondhand furniture I'd refinished rather than replaced, all so they could have better. And this was how they repaid me, not with gratitude, not even with indifference, with theft. Because that's what it was. No matter what they called it, no matter how they justified it, they'd stolen from me. I picked up my phone and called each of them one final time. Michael didn't answer. Jennifer sent me to voicemail. Daniel texted back, "Can't talk in a meeting." At that moment, sitting alone in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my children's betrayal, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim in this story. I'd spent my whole life being soft, being understanding, being the mother who sacrificed and forgave. Where had it gotten me? I called my bank first and put a fraud alert on all my accounts. Then I called each credit card company and did 3 things. I reported every single charge made by the authorized users as fraudulent. I removed all 3 children as authorized users, effective immediately. I canceled all 3 credit cards and requested new account numbers. The representatives warned me this would trigger investigations. I told them to investigate away. I filed police reports that same afternoon, walking into my local precinct with all 3 statements, account records and printed emails showing my children's refusal to repay me. "Ma'am, you understand this means your children could face criminal charges?" the officer asked, looking at me with concern. "I understand perfectly," I said. "They've committed fraud. They've stolen nearly $50,000 from me. The fact that they're my children doesn't change what they did." I thought filing the reports would bring relief. Instead, it brought war. Michael called me at 11 o'clock that night, his voice cold with rage. "What the hell did you do, Mom?" "I protected myself from thieves," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. "We're your children. You filed criminal charges against your own children. Do you know what this could do to our careers? Our reputations? Do you know what you've done to my financial security, my retirement, my peace of mind? We were going to pay you back." "When, Michael? You've had months. You've had every opportunity. Instead, you maxed out my cards and bought yourself luxury items I could never afford." Jennifer called minutes after Michael hung up. She was crying, her voice high and panicked. "Mom, the police called me. They said you're pressing charges. How could you do this to me? I'm your daughter. And I'm your mother who you stole from without hesitation. We didn't steal. You gave us those cards. For emergencies, not for designer handbags and vacations." "I can't believe you'd do this to your own family," she sobbed. "Wait until everyone finds out what kind of mother you really are." Daniel's message came via text, laced with venom. "You're destroying this family over money. You're pathetic. We'll never forgive you for this. Don't expect to ever see your grandchildren again. If you're watching this and thinking about subscribing to hear how this turns out, please hit that button now. You're going to want to see what happened next. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong." 3 days after I filed the police reports, my doorbell rang at 8 in the morning. I opened it to find all 3 of my children standing on my porch with a man in an expensive suit holding a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Vivian Patterson?" the man asked. "My name is Gregory Walsh. I represent your children. May we come in?" My stomach dropped, but I stood my ground. "No, you may not." "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said, his jaw tight. "You've made a serious mistake." "The only mistake I made was trusting you." Gregory Walsh smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Patterson, I advise you to reconsider your position. My clients are prepared to pursue legal action against you for defamation, emotional distress, and abuse of process. You filed false police reports accusing them of fraud when they were explicitly authorized to use those credit cards. They were authorized for emergencies, not personal shopping sprees. Authorization is authorization, legally speaking," Walsh continued. "There was no written contract limiting how they could use the cards. Your credit card agreements show them as authorized users with full privileges. By filing criminal charges, you've subjected them to public humiliation, professional damage, and severe emotional distress." Jennifer stepped forward, her eyes red. "Mom, we don't want to sue you. We don't want this to get uglier. Just drop the charges and we can work this out as a family." "Work it out?" I repeated. "You've stolen $47,000 from me." "We're willing to set up a payment plan," Michael interjected. $50 a month from each of us. We'll pay you back eventually." I did the math in my head. At $150 a month, it would take them over 26 years to repay me. I'd be 98 years old. "That's not acceptable," I said. Gregory Walsh opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. "Then you leave us no choice. This is a cease and desist letter demanding you withdraw all police reports and publicly retract your accusations within 72 hours. If you don't comply, we'll file a lawsuit seeking damages of $200,000 for the harm you've caused to their reputations and mental health." My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "Get off my property." "Mom," Daniel started. "I said get off my property. All of you. And Mr. Walsh, you can tell my children that I'll see them in court." After they left, I sat on my couch and let myself cry for the first time since this started. Not because I was scared of their lawyer, not because I doubted my decision, but because I was mourning the children I thought I'd raised, the children I'd believed they were. Then I dried my eyes and got to work. I called a lawyer of my own, Patricia Hendricks, a woman who'd handled my will years ago. I explained everything, showed her the statements, the police reports, the cease and desist letter. She listened carefully, taking notes. "Vivian, this is actually more straightforward than you might think," Patricia said. "Yes, they were authorized users, but authorization doesn't mean they had permission to make personal purchases for their own benefit. The credit card agreement you have with the company is for your use. Authorized users are meant to act on your behalf, not enrich themselves." "But they have a lawyer saying—" "They have a lawyer trying to bully you into dropping charges," Patricia interrupted. "This Gregory Walsh is probably charging them a fortune to write scary letters. The truth is, they have very little legal ground to stand on. The credit card companies will cooperate with the fraud investigation because they don't want to be held liable either, and your children's own spending patterns prove they weren't making emergency purchases on your behalf." She paused. "But I need to ask you something. Are you sure you want to pursue this? These are your children. This will likely destroy your relationship with them." I thought about that question. Really thought about it. "They destroyed the relationship when they decided I was an ATM machine instead of their mother," I said finally. "I spent decades putting them first. I sacrificed everything for them. And the moment I needed them to be decent human beings, to show basic respect for what I'd worked for, they chose designer purses and luxury vacations instead. What relationship is there left to destroy?" Patricia nodded. "Then let's fight back." Over the next 6 weeks, Patricia worked with the police and the credit card companies to build a comprehensive case. What we discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. The credit card companies provided detailed records of every transaction. Michael had used my cards to fund a gambling habit I never knew about. Over $18,000 in charges at casinos and online betting sites. Jennifer had purchased luxury items and then resold many of them online for cash, essentially laundering money from my credit. Daniel had added his girlfriend as an additional user on one of my accounts without my knowledge, and she'd run up $6,000 in charges at stores I'd never heard of. They'd also lied about their financial situations. Michael had received his bonus from work. He'd used it for a down payment on a boat. Jennifer's unexpected dental work was actually cosmetic veneers she'd wanted for years. Daniel had no medical expenses. His wife had left him 3 months ago, and he'd been using my money to fund his newly single lifestyle. The police investigation revealed they'd discussed their plan in a group text thread. Jennifer had written, "Mom's not even using this credit. We're not hurting anyone." Michael responded, "She'll never know if we keep it under control." Daniel added, "And if she does find out, what's she going to do? Disown us? She'd never." They'd calculated my love for them as permission to steal. They'd weaponized the fact that I was their mother. Patricia presented all of this evidence to the district attorney's office. The DA assigned a prosecutor named Helen Reeves, a woman in her 50s who listened to my story with increasing anger. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm going to be very direct with you," Helen said. "Your children committed clear financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. In this state, that's a felony. They coordinated their theft. They lied to you repeatedly. They showed no remorse. They tried to intimidate you with legal threats. This is textbook elder financial abuse." "I'm not vulnerable," I protested. "I'm perfectly capable." "Vulnerability isn't about capability," Helen explained. "It's about the relationship. They exploited their position as your children, people you trusted implicitly, to steal from you. That's what makes it abuse." Gregory Walsh sent another letter, this time offering to settle. My children would plead guilty to misdemeanor charges, pay restitution of $10,000 total, and complete community service. In exchange, I'd agree not to pursue civil damages. Patricia looked at me. "It's your decision." I thought about the washing machine that was never broken, the anniversary trip Michael could have saved for honestly, Jennifer's crocodile tears, Daniel's threats about my grandchildren, the casual cruelty of, "What's the harm in us using some of the available credit?" "No," I said. "No deal." The preliminary hearing was held in August. All 3 of my children appeared with Gregory Walsh, who clearly hadn't expected me to reject their settlement offer. They sat on the other side of the courtroom, not looking at me. Helen Reeves presented the evidence methodically, the credit card statements, the text messages, the spending patterns that proved none of this was emergency related, the lies they'd told me, the intimidation tactics they'd used after I filed charges. Gregory Walsh tried to argue that this was a family dispute, not a criminal matter, that I'd given permission, however informally, that my children had always intended to pay me back. The judge, a stern woman named Margaret Chen, cut him off. "Mr. Walsh, intention means nothing when your clients maxed out their mother's credit cards, buying luxury goods for themselves. The evidence is clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was systematic theft." The judge ruled there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. She set bail at $50,000 for each of my children, $150,000 total. Gregory Walsh objected strenuously, but the judge was unmoved. These defendants showed premeditation, coordination, and a clear intent to exploit their mother's trust, Judge Chen said. They showed no remorse and actually attempted to further victimize her with legal threats. I consider them a financial danger to the victim. Bail stands. I watched my children's faces as the reality set in. Jennifer started crying. Michael looked like he might be sick. Daniel stared at me with pure hatred. They each posted bail within hours. I later learned they'd borrowed money from their in-laws, who were horrified by what they'd done. Gregory Walsh tried one more time to negotiate a plea deal. Helen Reeves refused. "Your clients had their chance," she told him. "They rejected it when they showed up at Mrs. Patterson's home with legal threats instead of restitution. We're going to trial." The trial began in October, on a cold Monday morning. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, and there were only a handful of people in the gallery. Some reporters, a few curious observers, my children's spouses looking miserable. Helen Reeves built her case piece by piece. She called representatives from each credit card company, who testified about the charges, the authorization process, and how authorized user accounts were meant to function. She introduced the text messages where my children discussed their plans. She showed receipts for luxury items, the handbags, the watches, the vacation packages. Then she called me to the witness stand. I'd been dreading this moment, but Patricia had prepared me well. Helen asked me about my relationship with my children, about why I'd added them as authorized users, about how I'd discovered the charges. I spoke slowly, clearly, looking at the jury as I answered. I trusted them completely, I said. They're my children. When they asked to be added to my cards for emergencies, I never imagined they'd use that access to steal from me. I spent 50 years building financial security. I worked 2 jobs. I sacrificed constantly, and they took it in 3 months to buy things they wanted but didn't need. Gregory Walsh cross-examined me, trying to make it seem like I'd been unclear about the terms, that emergency was ambiguous, that I'd been negligent in not monitoring the accounts sooner. Mrs. Patterson, isn't it true you rarely check these credit card statements? He asked. I trusted my children not to steal from me, I replied. That's not negligence. That's parenting. But you gave them the cards with no written restrictions. Mr. Walsh, if I gave you my house keys to water my plants while I was away, would you think that gave you the right to move in and sell my furniture? I interrupted. Authorization for a specific purpose isn't authorization for anything you want. Several jurors nodded. Gregory Walsh moved on quickly. When my children testified in their own defense, I watched them carefully. Michael claimed he genuinely believed I wouldn't mind, that our family had always shared resources. Jennifer cried and said she'd made mistakes but never meant to hurt me. Daniel was defiant, insisting I was vindictive and cruel for pressing charges over family matters. None of them apologized. Not once during the entire trial did any of them look at me and say they were sorry. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. On the count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, how do you find the defendant, Michael Patterson? Guilty. On the count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, how do you find the defendant, Jennifer Morrison? Guilty. On the count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, how do you find the defendant, Daniel Patterson? Guilty. The courtroom remained silent as the verdicts were read. My children sat motionless, their faces pale. Jennifer put her head in her hands. Michael stared straight ahead. Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes still full of anger when he glanced my way. Judge Chen scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. As the bailiffs led my children out of the courtroom, Jennifer finally turned to look at me. I don't know what she expected to see. Regret, maybe, or sadness. But I felt nothing except the cold certainty that this was justice. Patricia touched my arm. You did it. I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. The sentencing hearing was brief. Helen Reeves requested significant penalties, citing the breach of trust, the amount stolen, and the complete lack of remorse. Gregory Walsh pleaded for leniency, arguing his clients were first-time offenders who'd made mistakes, but had otherwise been productive members of society. Judge Chen looked at each of my children in turn. You didn't make mistakes, she said. You made choices. You chose to exploit your mother's trust. You chose to steal from the woman who sacrificed everything for you. You chose to max out her credit cards buying luxury items while she watched her retirement savings disappear. And when she tried to hold you accountable, you hired a lawyer to threaten her. She paused. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. You felt entitled to your mother's money, to her credit, to her financial security. That entitlement has destroyed your relationship with her and damaged 3 families. Now you'll face the consequences. Michael received 2 years in prison, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay restitution of $18,000. Jennifer received 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, and restitution of $16,000. Daniel received 2 years in prison, 3 years probation, and restitution of $13,000. All 3 were ordered to complete financial literacy courses and counseling. All 3 would have felony records that would follow them for the rest of their lives. As the sentences were read, Jennifer sobbed. Michael sat perfectly still, his face blank. Daniel looked at me one last time, his expression a mixture of disbelief and rage, as if even now he couldn't accept that I'd actually followed through. The bailiffs took them away. I watched them go, these 3 people I'd carried inside me, nursed, raised, loved with everything I had, and I felt nothing but relief that it was over. The credit card companies erased the $47,000 in fraudulent charges from my accounts after the convictions. The restitution my children were ordered to pay would cover what I'd already paid out of pocket trying to keep my credit intact. My credit score, which had plummeted during those months, began to slowly recover. I changed banks, got new credit cards with security features I'd never needed before, and set up alerts for every transaction. I learned expensive lessons about trust and family and the difference between the two. Patricia Hendricks became a friend. We have coffee sometimes and don't talk about the case. Helen Reeves sent me a note months later, telling me I'd been brave. I kept it in my kitchen drawer, though I'm not sure brave is the right word. I was just a woman who refused to be a victim. My children's spouses divorced them. Michael lost his job. Jennifer's friends abandoned her. Daniel moved to another state after his release. None of them speak to me anymore, and I don't speak to them. My grandchildren, Daniel's teenage daughter and Michael's 2 sons, reached out when they turned 18 and learned what really happened. We have lunch sometimes. They apologize for things that weren't their fault. I'm 73 now. I live alone still, in the same house, with better locks and a security system. My savings are rebuilding slowly. I take a trip once a year, modest but meaningful. I donate to charities that help elder abuse victims. I have friends at church who know my story and don't pity me for it. People ask sometimes if I regret pressing charges against my own children. The answer is simple. I regret raising people who thought stealing from their mother was acceptable. I regret that they felt entitled to what I'd worked for. I regret that they valued luxury items more than integrity. But I don't regret holding them accountable. Not for 1 second. Because the truth is, the real betrayal wasn't the money. It was the moment I realized my children saw me as someone to exploit rather than someone to love. That's what I lost. And that's what I fought to preserve in myself, the knowledge that I deserved better, even from my own family. The worst part wasn't taking them to court. It was realizing I had to.